Everyone, and welcome to the I-95 Corridor Coalition's webinar on managing arterials, 3 case studies from a statewide to city perspective. We're going to get started. And for those of you who may not have participated in the past, we will be today, all of you will be in a listen-only mode. If you need to speak with the operator for some reason, please press *0. If you are having other difficulties with the web or audio, please get in touch with Justin Ferry. His number is on the screen, and I will read it out, 484-557-7009. This webinar is being recorded, and the presentations will be posted to the I-95 Corridor Coalition website. Participants will receive a link to the presentations after they are posted. So in terms of asking questions today, we will do so in the chat box, and please type your question there. The chat box will be monitored, and at the end of each presentation, if the question has not been answered directly into the chat box, the presenter will respond to your question verbally. If you have any questions after that particular presenter has completed their presentation, please feel free to ask that question. We simply ask that you put a little @ symbol, and Justin will type an example of that into the chat box now with the speaker's name so that we know who the question is being directed to. The Q&A will also be available on after the presentation is complete, several days after the presentation is complete. And with that, Denise Marco, I would like to turn the table over to you for welcome and introduction.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, and thank you all for taking time out of your day today to attend the webinar. We have a full agenda today. We have 3 speakers who are going to bring you 3 different perspectives about arterial management. On the agenda in front of you, after my speaking, I'm going to turn it over to Emad. His topic is going to talk about 10 years of transit signal priority and the lessons learned in New York City. Then we're going to move to Soumya, who is going to speak about arterial management toolkits and experiences from Washington, D.C. And then we're going to bring you Ponnaluri, who is going to talk about Florida's statewide arterial management plan. So in many of our webinars, we typically start at the 50,000-foot level to provide a broad overview, and then we do a deeper dive into more specifics with the showcase presentations. But this time, we're going to do it in reverse. We're going to start with Emad. He's going to talk specifically about their pilots working with transit signal priorities in the city. Then we're going to move to D.C. Soumya is going to talk about some of their innovative TSMO strategies for arterial management, particularly related to congestion within the district. And then Raj is going to go and introduce their Florida statewide STAMP plan, which is the statewide arterial management plan. So we're starting with the deep dive presentation this time, and then we're going to move into a statewide approach. So I hope you find the presentations interesting and informative. And having a webinar, as an FYI, having a webinar that focuses on arterial management was one of the requests that came out of the corridor-wide strategic planning session that was held in March of this year. So that's our agenda for today. As you can see, we've got 201 registered, 25 different states, and as you can tell, they're from DOTs, turnpike authorities, MPOs, federal agencies, universities, vendors, and consultants. So there is quite a diverse audience that we've got today. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the speakers, each one of these, and we'll start with Emad. Our speakers, I have to say, are all very credentialed in reading their bios. Emad Makarious is an administrative engineer with the Signals and the ITS Engineering Division of Traffic Operations in New York City DOT. He's got a strong educational background, really, in transportation. He's got experience in what they call micro-simulation and the development of single timing plans. He's involved right now with the citywide management, development, design, and implementation of the TSP, or transit signal priority treatments, in several corridors that you're going to see. And he's been with the city for New York for about 25 years. He has a bachelor's, a master's in civil engineering. He's actually got 2 masters, one in civil engineering, one in transportation planning and engineering, both from Polytechnic Institute. He's a registered PE with New York State, Delaware State, and a PTOE with ITE. Soumya, Soumya will follow Emad. He is the Associate Director for Transportation Operations and Safety with Washington, D.C. Department of Transportation. So in his role right now, he leads a staff of over 450. He's got an annual budget of about $75 million, and he works in the areas of ITS, transportation management, roadway operations. He works with the traffic control operators and many other things. He's recognized as a leader in the industry. He's got over 20 years of experience in the transportation profession, spanning public and private sectors. And prior to joining DDOT, he worked for an MPO in Chicago. He's also worked for consultants such as Transcor and SAIC, AECOM, and DMJM. So he's got a diverse background, both public and private sector. He's got a civil engineering degrees also, both bachelor's and master's, as well as an MBA from the University of Maryland. Raj Ponnaluri, who will be our third speaker. Raj is the State Connected Vehicle and Arterial Management Engineer at the Florida Department of Transportation. He leads the state's arterial management, wrong-way driving, and connected vehicle programs. He assists with the development of the TSMO initiatives as well. So he's got a bachelor's, he's got a master's, as well as a PhD. As I mentioned, very credentialed speakers today. He's a registered PTOE, PE, PMP, you name it. He has 22 years of experience in traffic engineering and operations, ITS, and TSMO work. So he's also published. He's published his work with several journals. He's been published in the ITE and TRB, and he serves on ITE's TSMO National Council. So again, as I mentioned, very credentialed speakers we have today to talk to us about arterial management. So without further ado, let me turn this over to Emad. He's going to talk to you about the transit signal priority studies that they're doing in New York City. Emad?
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. First, thank you, I-95 Corridor Coalition, for having me today. Today, I'm going to touch base with our program here, 10 years of signal priority, TSB, lesson learned in York. So, okay, we can start about this. Our agenda today starts from SBS features up to maintenance of TSB corridors. Right now, New York City have about 45,000 intersections citywide. Among those 45,000, we have over 13,500 signalized intersections, and we have about 120,000 pedestrian signals. Every year, we keep add about between 100 and 120 signalized intersections citywide. As everybody knows, public transit system operated by MTA New York City Transit, and DOT is in charge to manage street and traffic signals operated and maintained citywide. As you know, everybody, New York City have 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, and Queens. Right now, BRT in New York City, we call that selective bus service. Selective bus service, as you see from pictures here, from the left, that's start from branding, off-board fare collection, or-door boarding, real-time messenger information, bus lane, bus shelters, and also we use, of course, TSB technology. Okay, that's a sample of RTBI, one of our station here, and also that's for push button for bus arrival. That's for disabled. Okay, in New York City we have a nice wind system, a wireless network. We had this system since about 14 years ago. All traffic signals in New York City managed and connected with TMC wireless. And with this system, every device in New York City connected with TMC wireless. Among of this, of course, we use TSB application, which is controlled by TMC, again wireless. So I'm going to talk in detail in next slide here. The benefit for nice win is which wireless network for TSB, as you know, is eliminate need for instruction changes to traffic controller, required only GPS on the buses, and of course is no cost really for to implement TSB citywide. Okay, I'm gonna go on this little by little. We have the TSB check-in detector for each intersection. First, we have TSB check-in detector. Then TSB check-out detector. When the bus approaches the intersection, every bus capable with GPS and connect with transit server, which is a transit management center with 4G, and say I'm here away about whatever distance, 200, 300 feet from intersection, and then a transit server connect with TMC, DOT TMC, send a request for TSB. TMC send acknowledgement to MTA Transit, and then during this process, the DOT server sends through NiceWin connect with our controller, and then they grant the request either early green or extension green. All this happen within 2 seconds, maximum 2 seconds. So once the bus clear the intersection and clear out, as you see here, and then this there's a full picture of the all what I said before. All this happened within 2 seconds. Okay, so move forward here. We built a system engineering with a portion of New York City sub-regional ITS architecture covered by the Transit Signal Priority Project. As you see highlighted in yellow, those portion we built in the system here, or this portion here highlighted in yellow, with covered TSB subsystem. And that's more details here in the package, which I describe area how the communication between New York City MTA server, New York City, and also TMC. And I will have more details if anyone needs a link. We have a link for all the whole project for system engineering, both on the website. And we move forward here. That's a little snapshot of 60-second cycle length. Okay, we can talk about the policy we built in the house here. It starts from number 1 to next screen number 7. First, we start with TSB parameters, how we implement that. There's a sample for typical intersection with 60-second cycle length. The first graph shows extension green 5 seconds, and the lower here show area green for 5 seconds. We maintain coordination, of course, maintain minimum requirements for pedestrian based on 2009 MUTCD. We also define the jurisdiction zone for each intersection. Those switches also play on the policy. If any roadway has 2 directions, first come first serve, and of course the TSB duration varies by intersection and time of the day. Okay, we can go quick about the process, how we built the network and how we process the TSB. So we start with the network data. It starts from aerial photo, of course, physical inventory, and so on. All this listed on the left side, and also we got bus data also listed on the right side. All this important to build the network. So we move forward here. Which software we use? We use Synchro and we use EMSA. Both very important software packages. We use it for our project. Mainly Synchro, which is built network. We build an existing. We we measure the level of service, queue, and all these factors, and we built in the same time MSON. And on top of that, we have existing condition, and based on that, we see the improvement in synchro, which optimize network, and we call that TSP passive. And then we built MSON based on TSP passive, and we see the benefit from TSP active. All this we model all for AM, mid-day, PM, depends each code is required. Mainly AM and PM, but some coders we also do midday. So, as you know, New York City has a lot of constraints, pedestrian scenarios, coordination capacity, cross-street traffic, bus stops, and other corridor traffic, which is intersect with the main corridor. After we do the process through the software packages, we have before study and after study reports. Before study, which is mainly the outcomes from the software, either synchro and MSON. After study, we do real data collection from field based on the bus travel time, and basically we turn on and off TSP during this process. It varies between 4 to 8 weeks study during Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So that's every week. So after that, we evaluate the benefits from after implementing TSP. We move forward here. That's like simple watch detection zone is measured in feet based on estimated travel speed during each peak. Okay, let's little explain how when the bus approach. For each approach along the route for each signal in the system, there will be a defined area of that approach called check-in zone. Check-in zone and check-out zone. So when the bus enters check-in zone, send a request to a TMC. Say, I'm here, I need TSP. So within that detection zone, if that's due to traffic condition, however, the bus still inside the detection zone, send another request. Say, I need a TSP extension. So once the bus clears the detection zone, it's a check-out zone. So it send a message to the TMC said I clear. So that means the TMC ends the extended green phase. So this all happen maybe it depends 7-8 seconds. Okay, first project we did in Lower Manhattan, which is about 34 intersection, 2.2 miles. It starts from South Ferry, and end at Hudson Street. That's again 2.2 miles. We see the benefits between 5 to 8% improvement in the bus travel time. So from here up to here, about again 2.2 miles. And we did implement TSP AM, midday, PM. About the AM about 3 hours window, midday about 2 hours, I believe, and PM 3 hours window. Okay, this map shows currently we have in blue, we have covered about over 650 intersections implemented citywide, as you see here in green and blue. For here, all this blue, and difference. We're talking about over 60 miles citywide. The green, the red one, which is currently working on this corridor, and we're planning by end of 2020, citywide will have about 1,200 signalized intersection equipped with TSP. This another snapshot of early action TSP. We have another methodology. We use it. We test it right now. We implemented 2 corridors in green which is Fifth Avenue and Church Avenue. Again, the previous one here, whatever you see in the picture, we go full analysis, which we use Synchro and Emson. And the green one here, we just early actions, we use different methodology. We test it right now. Okay, we can touch base in next couple slides about how we maintain TSB operation. We monitor TSB code on a daily basis, of course. We determine if any issues regarding the with the buses, if we need to modify TSB setting, inspect each intersection within the corridors, and we do the changes, and we immediately see the changes next day. Okay, this is a snapshot of all efforts we do. It starts from TSB signal timing, TSB parameters, data collection, communication, TSB data, message and exchange interface, which buses TSB capable buses, transit and traffic deployment management. And this effort, it's joint effort between New York City DOT and New York City Transit, two agencies involved. This what we did here with our consultant. Start with adopt software based on the fleet, the buses, how we update our servers within a couple hours, and also MTA how they update their fleet also within a couple hours, and how we deploy the local limited TSB route. We also how the central TSB collect data for before and after without we go in the field. Also everything done in through the TSB logs on the daily basis, and how interface network between how they connect in New York City Transit with the New York City DOT for any changes. So all this done within a couple hours, same day, and we see the changes next day. Okay, this snapshot, how we monitor TSB. It starts from the upper right side here. How we see monitoring the video cameras at major location, as you see here, and that's one sample of wayfinding at major bus stop SBS, and that's how we monitoring that the corridors in our workstation. As you see here, the pink circle, that's TSB capable and active, and green, that's regular intersection. So that shows how when the bus moving through the corridors, how the intersection change from green to TSB extension or early green, and that's one of the report as you see here. We move forward here. Well, that's 1 hour of the reports from dashboard reports. As you see here, travel. That's like one of the reports. Travel time summary, details of travel time for each run. How we see that, and we see check TSB data and comparison with the expected performance. And if we see something unusual like pink, we have to go and inspect that and see what's the issue with the controller or from the buses and so on. And that's another snapshot of the dashboard report, and start from the signal timing calculation on each request, update and clear message, and it shows what happened exactly at the intersection. I see here. So here's for example, the request came during the green, and it doesn't need any extension, so it's the bus goes through. So we're talking about sometimes we have data over a million records. So we have a consultant with workstation. We monitor that on daily basis. And how the TSB calculate. Here's also another report: TSB green time calculation for each cycle. Again, there's another snapshot of the report. Again, as you see here, comparison between each cycle and each record, what happened for each record here. That's of course wasn't the TSB active, which were between 7 to 10 a.m. That's typical, and 12 to 2 o'clock, and between 4 to 7 p.m. Okay, that's like that's another snapshot. TSB performance data exchange interface, and as you see here, how the communication between TMC and TMC, right in New York City TMC and New York City Transit server, how the communication between the servers. So it's very clear here. So we move forward. Sorry. Okay, that's a snapshot of the benefits for each route. It starts for M15, S79, B44, and BX41, and it shows the benefit difference for each route, and also it varies between AM, PM, midday, and so on. And we see the benefit, as I mentioned before, it varies between 5% to about 25%. It depends the traffic, and depends also the time of the day. And that's one of the awards we have it back 2015 for American Council of Engineering Companies, and there's another ITS New York. We have that back to June 2015. With that, I finish my quick presentation, and thank you everyone for listening.
Emad, thank you. Just quickly though, there are a couple questions in the chat box. If I could read them off to you, maybe you could answer them briefly.
Sure.
Question for you. Alan Ward had, what happens when a cross-street bus also approaches an intersection at the same time? How are the priorities decided? And Jonathan Smith, I think, responded, the priority is typically first come, first served. Is that correct? Okay,
that's good questions. If the corridors one corridor two-way, first come, first served. But if my understanding, the cross street, if they have another main corridors has TSB, intersect with another corridor has TSB, currently that locations we give priority only one route. We don't have the capability right now to our controller doesn't act with both corridors, so we work on that right now.
Okay. And thank you. Another question Eric Berkman had was, how are the door switches integrated? Is it through the passenger counter, or through the bus diagnostic port, or some other way?
Through the bus computer. Every bus has computer and connect with the transit server. So basically, when the door open, it doesn't send any request for TSB. So when the bus closed, the door closed, now the system is ready to communicate with transit server to start to send a request for TSB.
Okay. And his other question is, what kind of indicators do you use to measure the TSB effectiveness? How do you calculate the metrics?
Okay. As I mentioned before, we have after study methodology, and basically when we do after study, we have turn on TSB and off. So when the TSB off, we have a report. When it's TSB on, we have different reports. So we with TSB in log, we measure, we see the buses, which buses send the request, and with that log, we know which bus send the request, and with that we summarize our data. We know which buses, and then we calculate travel time. Okay. I'm not sure if clearly. Yes.
Thank you, Emad. Two more questions, and then we'll move on to Showma's. Sure. But Kakev has asked, have you noticed a negative impact to a coordinated system resulting from the implementation of the TSP? Have you noticed a negative impact? Okay.
No, because what happened, remember we use software packages, so we're very careful with coordination, and then when we built MSOM simulation, the program gave us the best capability for TSB. Some intersection, we lock it for TSB. There's no TSB. So again, if you have simple corridors with 50 locations, sometimes we decided among 50 to only 20 intersections apply for TSB. And we turn off the TSB for another 30. So depends the intersection. So so in general speaking, not every intersection we apply for TSB. Depends simulation, recommendation, and so on.
Do you, Emad, do you have any data showing how TSP impacts the corridor?
Yes.
Impacting, you do?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Can you share that with us at all?
Okay, later. Yes.
No, not now, but later? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Right,
I can send you a link. I'll send you a link, yeah.
Send you a link. We can follow that up and add that to our follow-up
sure.
when we send it out.
Sure.
Okay. And then one last question is that do you use virtual check-in and check-out zones or physical sensors like radar and loops?
No, that's all communicated by wireless. So
wireless.
there's no sensor.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. Thank you very much, Emad. I'm
Sure.
For everyone on the line needs to know the presentations are being recorded. We are recording the Q&A. We will also follow up with a Q&A summary document that will go out with a link once the presentations are done.
Sure.
So thank you, Emad, very much. Next, we're going to have Soumya. Soumya Day is coming up to talk about what's happening in Washington, D.C. And Soumya, if you have anybody within your group that's on the line that wants to actually answer any questions on your behalf, please feel free to give them license, or I will follow up at the end of your presentation as well. All righty?
Okay.
There you go. Take it away.
All right. So thank you, Denise. And I would like to, before I start off, like to thank the I-95 Corridor Coalition for providing a forum for us to share some of our experiences in terms of arterial management. So I'll be talking about, and thank you all for joining. I know everybody is busy, but thank you for taking the time out to join this. So I will be talking about a whole bunch of strategies that we have put together in terms of arterial management. But before I begin, I think it would be useful to give you a quick overview of the transportation system in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is a fairly small area, just over 68 square miles, but it's in the middle of the D.C., Virginia, Maryland metropolitan area, which has a population of 5.6 million. Our population is 700,000. And it's growing by about 1,000 every month. And a big portion of this growth is coming from the millennials who are moving into Washington, D.C. The daytime population of Washington, D.C. Doubles, and that's because of about 500,000 commuters that come into the city every day. And then on a typical day, we have about 125,000 visitors. So it's a mix of commuters, visitors, and residents that are the users of our transportation system. We are very multimodal in nature. We are primarily an arterial system, and nationally we have one of the lowest auto ownership models, and that's to a large extent driven by congestion, by the fact that there are multiple modes available for people to get from point A to point B, and then the mindset of the new millennials that are coming in. So as I said, primarily an arterial system, less than 1,500 miles of freeway, and we have 1,650 signalized intersections. So the effectiveness of our transportation system is basically dictated by how efficiently our signal system and our arterial system runs. 1 out of every 4 trips entering the district is cut through traffic, so they don't have a destination. And given the large number of commuters, 2 out of every 3 cars in the district during rush hour is from out of state. We are very multimodal. We have some of the highest percentages of transit usage, the non-motorized transportation. As I said, 37% of the residents don't own an automobile. And our long-term sustainability plan is that by the year 2032, we want to get to a point where 75% of our trips are being made by non-SOV mode, non-single occupant vehicle mode. So this has implications on some of the policy, tactical, and strategic things that we put in place to kind of incentivize all of these modes that we are encouraging people to use. So when I look at the arterial management strategy, a good way to frame that would probably to put those in three big buckets. The first one would be how do we manage our signalized intersections and the strategies associated with that. The second one would be from intersection to intersection. How do we manage our lanes? And the third one, there has been lots of work done that shows the nexus between how effectively you manage the curbside versus its impact on mobility and safety. So the third bucket, if you will, would be a host of curbside management strategies that we have put in place. So these are the overarching strategies that take into account both mobility and safety, and that's going to be the focus of our discussion today. But then there are strategies that we have put in place purely on based on our Vision Zero approach. So these are intersection management strategies such as no right turn on red, leading pedestrian intervals, left turn hardening, which I won't get into today. So the focus of today's presentation is going to be just mobility and safety management strategies, a big overarching strategy. And what I'll talk about today is just I'll give you a flavor for some of the stuff that we have done, but the focus is going to be on the ones that are highlighted in purple. So I'll be talking about how we evaluated the effectiveness of our rush hour restrictions. We just piloted a bus-only lane this summer, and then talk about a parking pricing pilot. So in terms of signal management strategies, we believe in signal timing optimization. Again, the effectiveness of our signal system is a reflection of how effective our transportation system operates. So we go through this cycle of signal timing optimization, and what we typically do is break up the city into 4 major segments and do our optimization on each of these segments. And it typically takes us about 2.5 to 3 years to go through all of the 1,650 signals. And the benefits have been pretty substantial. So the benefit cost ratio is about 41:1. So it's an indication that this is money well spent. And then there are stats on the reduction in emissions, the reduction in delays, reduction in number of stops, and the reduction in fuel consumption. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the benefits in travel times. So you probably can't see this very well, but the brown bar here is the before travel times, and the blue bar is the after travel times. And we have broken the analysis down into AM, midday, PM, and weekends. And there have been substantial savings in travel times. And this is the travel time across 60 corridors. And the savings during the AM was about 1 hour and 4 minutes per day. The midday was about 1 hour, 57 minutes. The PM was 1 hour and 32 minutes. And the weekend was 34 minutes. So substantial benefits in corridor travel times. And in terms of bus travel times also, we saw benefits in each of the 3 time slices. The other thing that we did, I talked about trying to encourage non-traditional modes of transportation. So we evaluated as part of this the benefits to cyclists. And I won't go into details, but this is, we calculated the number of stops along Pennsylvania Avenue before and after. And before our signal timing optimization, the cyclists had to make 7 different stops, and now that's down to 3. So that's the benefit to bicyclists as a part of the signal timing optimization process. So transit signal priority, I'll just touch on this because Emad has gone into great detail. So we have transit signal priority along 195 different signalized intersections. It's a collaborative process with our regional transit operator. And overall, we did some preliminary analysis and saw that our bus travel times reduced by about 5.3% along these corridors. And we are in the process of doing a more robust analysis. And these are some of the metrics that we are using: the bus run time, travel time reliability, schedule deviation, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing that we tested a few years ago was how effective is that adaptive signal control in a dense arterial environment. And we tested this along 3 different corridors in Washington, D.C., Rhode Island Avenue, New York Avenue, and Pennsylvania Avenue. And so we did a before and after analysis. And what this basically showed in a nutshell is that there were limited travel time benefits on the main line, but the levels of delay on the side streets and the queues were really unacceptable. And then there were issues with confusion with pedestrian crossing times and all of that. So we kind of shelved the idea and reverted back to our pre-timed signal operation. So now let's talk about the second bucket, the lane management strategy. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is a framework that we put in place for assessing the effectiveness of our current rush hour restrictions. So typically, these rush hour restrictions were put in place a long time ago. The travel patterns in the district have changed. 15, 20, 25 years ago, the district was mainly destination. There was not much activity happening in the district, but now the things have changed. So it's a very vibrant community. So we wanted to see whether the restrictions, rush hour restrictions that were put in place a long time ago are still viable. And if not, what kind of framework can be put in place to make an assessment on a corridor by corridor basis? So when you do the evaluation, it's basically a trade-off between mobility and access, right? So if you provide more lanes during rush hour, your mobility is going to increase, but at the expense of maybe access to your adjacent land users. So if you are not allowed to park on the curb lane, then the access to the adjacent businesses and other activity centers get reduced. And it might have a spillover effect onto neighborhoods that abut these corridors, right? So you might see things like reduced parking availability for the residents. You might see if you put in restrictions, if the restrictions are too stringent, you might start seeing things like cut-through traffic. So those were the kinds of things that we wanted to bring into the evaluation process. And we evaluated 2 major corridors, Connecticut Avenue and Rhode Island Avenue, to kind of assess and create the framework. So it was a 5-step process. We assessed the existing conditions, established the need for changing the restrictions, if any. We wanted to establish what acceptable operational thresholds are when we do the evaluation. We established how much we need to shift the restrictions by, if any. And then the other big piece is once we decide on a new time frame, if you will, for the restrictions, how do we deal with the transition point for the sake of consistency across the corridor. So this is kind of the basic framework. So this is the existing restrictions during the morning rush hour, are 7 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. So we did the analysis in 30-minute chunks to establish what the existing conditions are in terms of operations. And then based on the need, does it make sense to pull the rush hour restrictions, or in other words, start it earlier, or do we push it to a later time? So is 9:30 still good? Do we need to go to 10? Or the other question is if we pull it back to around 9 o'clock. And this assessment was done based on, like I said, the 2 major factors that we took into account. One was mobility, one was accessibility, and the impact on the adjacent network. So what we found as a result of this was these are the 2 corridors, Connecticut Avenue and Rhode Island. And for the analysis piece, we had broken them down into, we had broken them down in 2 segments. And we assessed the existing rush hour restrictions based on 2 scenarios. One was without optimizing the signal system, and then with the optimized scenario. And what this essentially shows is, I'll just give you the Connecticut Avenue example. So without optimization, these are the existing rush hour restrictions. But based on the thresholds that we established, it probably makes sense to increase the duration of the restrictions from as early as 2 p.m. in the afternoon to as late as 8 p.m. So that's without signal timing optimization. But once you optimize the signals, then you open the possibility of probably reducing your restrictions during the PM rush hour for segment 1. So that's the kind of analysis we went through. And based on the analysis, we tried to create some policy framework, right? So what are the different, it takes into account what the different thresholds could be for our analysis, the availability of transportation, the potential for neighborhood cut-through traffic, and the parking supply and demand in the neighborhood. And then based on that, we had some policy recommendations on what strategies we could put in place. So that is in a nutshell. We have a TRB paper on this, and I can direct you to our final report if somebody wants more information on this project. So the second one that I wanted to talk a little bit about is the bus-only lane project that we launched, the pilot that we launched this summer. It was done on H and I streets in Northwest DC. And what's interesting is that it's a very heavy bus corridor between H, I, and K Street. They account for about 40% of the riders in bus riders in Washington, D.C. So very heavy corridors. H and I are one-way pairs. And so we implemented rush hour bus-only lanes on H and I Street. And we had significant outreach. The mayor kind of launched the project. We coordinated with our enforcement partners. So it was a very high-profile project. And again, remember the number that I gave you, that by 2032, we want to get to 75% non-SOV mode. So these are the kinds of strategies that we are putting in place to incentivize other modes of transportation. So this is just an aerial of where the project. So this is I Street. Oops, I lost my mouse. This is I Street and H Street, so one-way pairs. And then we did some. Again, this is summer. The pilot is still going on, but I'm just sharing some preliminary analysis. So we calculated average change in bus speeds by the different blocks. So these are the different blocks. This is for I Street, and this is for H Street. And the preliminary results are a mixed bag. For I Street, especially during the PM rush hour, there has been significant improvement in bus operation, about a 17.9%, 18% improvement. So that's pretty significant. But what was surprising was that in H Street, on H Street, the bus performance, the travel times and speeds actually decreased. And then we started peeling the different layers of the onion, and we saw that what was causing this was heavy right turn movements, especially on 15th Street and 17th Street near the White House, that was impeding the bus travel lanes on the bus-only lanes. What was interesting is, so what changed, right? So before the bus-only lanes, the bus operators they kind of knew what the patterns were, and they were using the second lane to make that through trip. But with the implementation of bus-only lanes, they had this mindset that they needed to stick to the bus-only lane, and they were getting caught up with all the right turns. So there are some strategies that we are trying to put in place to alleviate that problem. And in terms of travel time reliability, it was, again, I think I Street did pretty well, and the reduction in travel time reliability, or the standard deviation, was mainly driven by the fact that because of the friction with the right turn. So the lessons learned, the key issues that we are trying to resolve right now is the right turning issue. There was a informal bus layover on one of the bus lanes, so we are in the process of relocating that. And then we are obviously, enforcement is a big piece of this. So we are trying to minimize the encroachments on the bus-only lanes by vehicles that are not supposed to be there. So very quickly on reversible lanes, we do have reversible lanes in Washington, D.C., but we are restricted in terms of what kind of signage we put up. We are not allowed to put up overhead lane control signs. So when I shared the experience of Washington, D.C., you have to take into account some of the constraints under which we have to operate our reversible lanes. So we looked at reversible lanes in terms of three basic metrics. One was utilization of existing infrastructure, right? So you have 4 lanes, you have 7 lanes, you try to reallocate the pavement or the capacity based on your demand. So from that perspective, I think reversible lanes do very well. From an economic revitalization and placemaking standpoint, it does not do that well because reversible lanes cater to through traffic, not destination traffic. And where we are trying to go as a city is make this a place where people come and entertain themselves and have fun, right? So if that's your overarching goals, then maybe on some mixed-use corridors, reversible lanes are not that good of a strategy. But the biggest drawback was because of the constraints that we have in place in terms of sign placement, the safety of reversible lanes were not as high as compared to surrogates or a control corridor. They had a higher crash rate. So again, we have an ITE paper on this. I will be happy to direct you to that if you want more information on reversible lanes in an arterial setting. And then the last strategy that I wanted to elaborate was curbside management. And I know I'm short on time, but I'll quickly talk to you about a curbside dynamic pricing project that we did in the Chinatown Penn Quarter area. What we did here was use technology, economics, and advanced analytics to improve the on-street parking experience for customers. And the way we did that was by pulling 2 different policy levels. The first one was the duration for which you can park, and then the second one was the amount of money that you need to pay to park. And we provided on real-time parking availability information to customers so they know where the open parking spaces are. So when we started out, we started with a citywide rate of $2.30, and every quarter we made price adjustments based on supply and demand. And after 7 price adjustments, the spread is now between $1 and $6.50 in the Penn Quarter Chinatown area. So that's the pricing level that we pulled. The time level that we pulled was that in the eastern part of the study area, during the evenings and Saturdays, there's lots of excess parking capacity. So to incentivize use of that space, we increased the time limits here from 2 hours to 4 hours. And as a result of that, we actually saw that people were parking there for longer duration and the spaces were better utilized. So I'll skip this. So what did the parking do, right? So what did all of this do, the policy levels that we pulled? So we collected data from 2 ways on how long it took people to find parking. So the first one was survey. So we did a before and after survey. And based on the survey, people told us that it took them 5 fewer minutes to find an open parking space in the Chinatown area. The second one was automated. We had about 60 Bluetooth sensors, and based on the track of the vehicles, we could kind of tell whether they were circling around the block to find an open parking space. So based on that analysis, we saw that the time to find parking reduced by about 3 minutes. The other thing that we found was that in high occupancy blocks, the turnover increased about 10%. So people were coming in and leaving the parking spaces earlier. And in low demand areas, the eastern part of the study area, people were actually staying longer and utilizing those spots more than they had done before. The amount of double parking, it decreased in the loading zones by about double parking citations fell by 55%, and the amount of violations in loading zones fell by 43%, substantial changes. and double parking in general in the study area decreased by a larger amount than it did in the control area. So it had a pretty positive impact. And then the other interesting thing is we saw, again, based on the Bluetooth sensors, that circling for parking reduced by as much as 15%. And that caused a reduction in overall congestion in the study area compared to the rest of the district. So overall, I think it was a very successful project. We met most of our objectives. There were some lessons learned, and we are looking at opportunities to expand that to the rest of the city. And the last thing in terms of in the curbside bucket that I wanted to talk about was passenger pickup drop-off zones, PUDO zones. So the demands on the curbside has changed over the last 5-6 years with the penetration of TNCs and other modes of transportation. So we started off with the pickup drop-off zones in nightlife area where we restricted parking and used the curb space for only pickup drop-off. The lessons learned there kind of enabled us to launch specific pickup drop-off zones in about 9 locations throughout the city based on demand. And then our goal is by the end of the year, we want to get to about 25 pickup drop-off locations across the district. So, so I will stop here. And then if there are any questions, I don't know what you want to do, Denise, wait till the end, or you want me to answer some questions?
Well, Soumya, there's a couple questions in the box right now. Mark Taylor actually has 2 of them. Maybe we could go over those pretty quick. His first question is when we were at the earlier slide when you were talking about the benefits to the cyclist, his question was, how did you measure the number of stops for bicycles when you were looking at that data?
This was, yeah, we actually did field bicycle runs. And I don't have the specifics of how many runs we did, but we basically had the data collection team ride the bicycle, ride the corridor on a bicycle.
Okay. Thank you. His other question had to do with, he's wondering did you say that your 3 adaptive systems are no longer being used or are no longer?
Yeah, we reverted back to pre-timed operation.
Okay.
They're still in place, but we're not using it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. And then Sanita had 2 questions for you, Soumya. And I'm not exactly sure. I think this was earlier in your presentation. Do you remove events and holidays from your evaluation data?
So I think she might be referring to, yeah, I'm not sure whether this is in the context of the Chinatown pilot or overall.
Yeah. Sanita, can you type in where you're looking at that? Because her other question was, do you look at seasonality as well? So I think she's typing where in the event, the travel time pilot, she's saying, during your travel time pilot. Did you look at seasonality and did you remove events and holidays from evaluation data?
The travel time pilot. Which pilot is this? Is this for the signal timings?
Sanita, is it for the, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I am not sure whether, I think the data, what we typically do is before and after data collection, and we try to make sure that that's during the same season. So if we did it the before data collection in June, we would do the after one in June, but I can get back with the specifics.
All righty. Okay, that's what's in the box right now. Soumya, do you have anything else to add to it was an awesome presentation. Otherwise, I'll move to Raj. If you...
No, I'm good.
You're good? Awesome. Thank you. That was great. Great technology, innovative strategies. It's awesome. Our third speaker for everyone on the phone is Raj Ponnaluri. And Raj, are you there? I'm going to hand this off to you and let you talk to the group about your stamp plan. All righty?
Thank you, Denise. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present on our program at Florida DOT. I'm now going to try and, Denise, did you say you transferred the screen over to me?
You have control, Raj.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. I'm trying to display the presentation. Let's see. There you go. Okay. Thank you very much again. So today I'm going to present to you on the Florida DOT's statewide arterial management program. Just for the sake of history, this program really started no more than 3 years ago. And part of the reason for that is, just as it is with many other states in the country, there's been a significant focus on freeway management systems. Even the I-95 Corridor Coalition recently, in one of their findings, have found, I should say, that arterial management is a big focus area. And we're finding this out not just in Florida, but in the rest of the nation as well. So we created a position that was focused only on arterial management. And I was in that position for a couple of years before an additional job of connected vehicle got onto my position. So now I'm the state's connected vehicle and arterial management engineer. So to make the long story short, we're going to try and cover 8 specific items, namely understanding the Florida's arterial system, the number of traffic signals in the state of Florida, our statewide arterial management program, some of the key elements that are related to the action plan that we developed, the traffic signal maintenance and compensation agreement, which we have had in place for a very long time, but has gotten a renewed emphasis and a lot more funding during the last 4 years. So I'm going to touch on that one. We'll briefly present on other traffic signals training modules, which we have developed, and also on the signal phasing and timing efforts that we have taken up in the state. In terms of where is Florida with respect to the arterial system, Florida's transportation system, as I understand, is one of the largest in terms of what we do with lane miles and whatnot. And 82% of the state highway system in the state of Florida is with respect to arterials and not freeways. 74% of it is on the national highway system, and just about half of it is on the strategic intermodal system. So you can very quickly see why we decided to put a lot of emphasis on arterial management, and that is because a significant amount of vehicle miles traveled actually happen on the arterials, even though we usually tend to put a lot more focus on freeways. So for those states who are intending to develop a program on arterials, you may want to take a quick look right in your backyard in terms of data about what type of freeway system you have and what type of arterial system you may have. And when people ask the question about how we are securing funding in the state of Florida, this is usually Exhibit A for us, because clearly there's a need to put an emphasis on arterials and how we manage those arterials with signal systems. Florida also is blessed to have one of the largest signal systems in the country. Just on the state highway system alone, we have 8,593 traffic signals, of which 72% of them are interconnected and monitored. Now you may wonder what we mean by interconnected and monitored. Either we have fiber connectivity or wireless connectivity of some sort, and by which we can actually bring information back to a central location at the local agencies who maintain those signals. So in other words, 3 out of 4 signals are actually connected in some form or fashion, which is a good thing because we can actually know the health of the signal system at any point in time. The arterial management program actually came directly out of the TSMO strategic plan, which we adopted back in the year 2017. And as a matter of fact, arterial management is one of the 6 focus areas that had been identified in the TSMO strategic plan, along with other elements like integrated corridor management, connected vehicles, managed lanes, and things of that type. So we do put a lot of emphasis, and as a matter of fact, as we move forward with some of the programs that we have underway, we start leveraging things of the type which we hear from the Federal Highway Administration with respect to business processes and things of that type. So clearly, we see arterial management as a major, what we call needle mover of sort. I know these are big words, but at the end of the day, we know that usually when we talk about connected vehicles and automated vehicle programs, things really start with a SPAT, signal phasing and timing. And I'm going to present on that on one of the later slides. So with respect to what we do in our action plan, the STAMP action plan, or the Statewide Arterial Management Program action plan, was adopted in the year 2018, I should say about a year ago. And as a part of this STAMP action plan, we collaborated with our district offices. And for those who do not know the Florida DOT, we have 8 district offices then we have the MPOs, TPOs, and the local maintaining agencies. And all the 8,000, well, all but 15 traffic signals out of the 8,593 are actually maintained by our local agencies. So more than 99% of the traffic signals in the state of Florida are actually are maintained by the local agencies, which means we work very closely with them through our district offices. And that is another reason why we felt that the STAMP action plan should look not only at the needs and the necessities at the DOT, but also with respect to what the local agencies can and should do and the type of support they would need. So this particular slide, even though it's a little dense, particularly with that circle on the left-hand side, it talks about these 5 items: traffic control strategies, field technologies, TMC technologies, maintenance and operation issues. I'm sure many of you know this, and I'm sure many of you have heard from your local agencies that operations and maintenance tends to be the #1 item on their agenda, and that should be the case. When we speak with our district officers and just looking at the attendees, I see Mr. Omar Maitin, who is one of the district traffic operations engineers. He oversees the District 6 traffic operations out of the Miami office. They know very well that the local agencies are keenly interested in the type of funding and the type of support that can come from the department with respect to maintaining the signal systems or active arterial management strategies or deploying ATSPM, the automated traffic signal performance measures, or adaptive signal control technologies and things of that type. So we take O&M quite seriously in the state of Florida, and as we speak, we are beginning to think whether the ITS devices on the arterials should be a part of the ITS maintenance and operations formulas. I'm sorry, I'm throwing a lot of information at you, but Florida is fortunate to have what we call the ITS operations and maintenance formulas for the freeway systems, where we have a set amount of funding which would take care of all the maintenance contracts in the state and for running the operations of all those ITS devices. So we're beginning to look into how we can fund the O&M on the arterials and put them into the ITS maintenance and operations formulas. Now that said, the traffic signal maintenance and compensation agreement, about which I'm going to talk in a few minutes from now, actually does provide a significant amount of funding. So bottom line on this slide is that we do want to pursue any and all traffic control strategies, at least in a pilot mode initially, learn from them, understand the lessons, and then translate those or transmit them over to the district offices and the local agencies for taking them forward. Even in terms of field technologies, the way we monitor them is to actually implement them, pilot test them, and whatnot. The traffic management center technologies are also widely available. Like I said, you may not be able to see much of the detail on the left-hand side, but in the green part of the puzzle, under the traffic control technologies, we talk about ATSPM, the adaptive signal control technologies, freight signal priority, transit signal priority, PedSafe, and so on and so forth. In terms of field technologies, we usually discuss the higher level emerging technology issues, communication needs, the need for updating or upgrading, I should say, the traffic signal controllers, the need for integrating ITS equipment, the need for updating detection and things of that type. From a TMC technology standpoint, we look at decision support systems for integrated quarter management. We want to look at dashboards to study the travel time that happens out there. We want to look at how data needs to be collected, stored, utilized, and perform analytics on them and things of that type. So I can go on and on with this particular slide, but I think in the interest of time, let me quickly move on to the next item. And that is with respect to the outcomes and performance assessment. We're trying to take a very holistic look at the way we do things. In other words, we ask for input from our leadership at the highest levels for 2 specific reasons. And that is, number one, we want to understand what specifically they want to accomplish. And as most of us know, we tend to hear about safety and mobility. My apologies for saying recognition locally and nationally. To be honest with you, that is important, but that is less important than safety and mobility, which is what I probably should have stated there. In terms of safety, we focus on multimodal safety, even though I put there as traffic and bike ped safety. We are actually interested in safety of all road users. And I updated my slides. I probably should have sent them over to I-95 Corridor Coalition, so my apologies on that. From a mobility standpoint, we get into travel time improvements, increase throughput for all road users, regardless of what type of mode choice they make. So the point on this slide is that leadership's input is absolutely key because they look at several aspects from within the organization and even outside. So whether it is the political considerations or considerations that benefit the population at large, those are the type of issues we take them seriously and put them into our action plan for doing the needful to get it done at the field level. In terms of systems availability, we all know how important it is to not only deploy the devices, but to make sure they actually run and run well in a sustained basis. And that is also the reason I said that we are beginning to look at the ITS maintenance and operations formulas going forward. Mainstreaming, I'm sure many of you have heard of this term many times before. I'm not going to beat the drum too many times except to say that mainstreaming is truly a lot more effort than we originally think. Mainstreaming is just not about meeting different offices and letting them know what your program is, but mainstreaming is also about going into the specific guidelines, the specific documents that we usually have, whether it's a traffic engineering manual or whether it's the Green Book or the Florida Design Manual or the PD&D manual. There's a whole bunch of manuals and documentation produced by different offices and divisions. And by mainstreaming, we mean to say that the arterial management elements should be included in those respective manuals. And last but not the least, from a mainstreaming perspective, we would like for the division heads to talk about TSMO and Arterials. And that way, when it comes from the right source, the information will be taken seriously by the respective division offices and the colleagues at DOT and the consulting world as well. So mainstreaming is a very important effort, as many of us know. In terms of action items, even though we said there are several action items, I can assure you that they are very specific. In other words, we want to be very focused on what we want to accomplish. We want to see that we can actually measure the outcomes at the end of the day. Accountability is a key part of the equation, especially when we put funding attached to many of these elements. It is important to get a return on investment, not necessarily to say that we are trying to do a business-like in a business-like environment, but at the end of the day, that is what is expected. In other words, results come when we actually put on the business hat, so to say. They all should be relevant and timely, not only to the DOT, but also to the local agencies, because our agendas may be different. A DOT may be looking at things at a higher level, while local agencies will be doing the day-to-day activities. So we need to make sure that they are relevant more than anything else. The district offices and the central office, we work very closely in making sure we achieve the goals in a very time-bound manner, and we actually monitor every single action item on a very regular basis through the meetings that we usually conduct. So in the process of, along the process, I should say, if there's a need to modify some of these goals, some of these action items, we do make some modifications because it's a very flexible plan. We stay with the larger footprint, but if necessary, we make those modifications. So here is a brief outline of the TSMCA, the Traffic Signal Maintenance and Compensation Agreement. This document is very much available in public domain. If you don't find it, just email me. We'll be happy to send you a copy of that. It spells out not only the terms and conditions under which the DOT and the local agency will operate, but more importantly, it talks about the 9 specific device types that we compensate. Traffic signals, the interconnected signals, UPSs, travel time detectors, pretty much all those that you see on the list there, the pedestrian flashing beacons. All these devices have a unit rate associated with them. And each year we inflate that amount by the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which is just around 2.5% to 3%. And that way the local agencies get the benefit of utilizing this funding to run the operations on a regular basis and maintain the equipment. In return, we expect at least 3 specific performance measures. The first one being, or one of the 3 being, a testing of the conflict monitors and making sure that the mainline left turn detection and the side street detection is 100% up and available. And they need to be repaired in a very time-bound manner. Pedestrian detection, for instance, needs to be repaired within 72 hours. 50% of the traffic signals should be reviewed and maintained every single year. In other words, in a 2-year time frame, every single cabinet should be open, and then the controllers should be evaluated to make sure they're actually working the way they should work. So there's a 100% maintenance compliance required within a 2-year time frame. So there are, and then in return, we also, Florida DOT has taken up a lot of responsibility on its shoulders, much more than we have done in the past. For instance, instead of the local agency chasing the insurance companies in the event of a third-party damage for insurance claims, Florida DOT has taken the responsibility of helping the local agency by compensating them as soon as we receive the report with the police report, the photographs and invoices and all the good stuff. We pay them ahead of time, and then Florida DOT then, the claims office, I should say, the Florida DOT's claims office then pursues with the insurance companies to get reimbursed for that amount. I'm not saying we'll get reimbursed every single time, but we do our very best, and we're usually very successful because we created a procedure to make sure all the necessary documentation is actually available. So anyway, service restoration is a very important element. Preventative and periodic maintenance have been spelled out within the TSMCA. Training. This is another big element we hear, a large point we hear about from many local agencies and our district offices. Originally, when we developed this traffic signals training several years ago, and I know PTAC is on this webinar as well. He helped us with one of the first trainings. Later on, our general engineering consultant with us, they are helping us advance that traffic signals training. We also developed a training module on, shall I say, adaptive signal control technologies through our STAMP consultant. We made the traffic signals training into a CBT, a computer-based training. I think I'll provide that link later on. That's where it is. So the trainings are also going well beyond traffic signals and adaptives. We are actually developing a training module on systems engineering as we speak. And our goal, basically, as you can see, I hope it's obvious now. By now it should be obvious that we are trying to hit on every element we can think of to provide the necessary tools that are out there to the local agencies. And thanks to Mark Taylor and UDOT and Eddie Curtis and so many at Purdue University who have developed this ATSPM, Florida DOT is fully leveraging the opportunity to deploy ATSPMs in the state. And I know Mark Taylor is on the line as well. So Mark, thank you. So traffic signal computer-based training, this is publicly available for anyone who wants to take a look at it. In general, this is a prerequisite to the 5 other modules we developed on traffic signals. And all those modules usually are, I don't want to say advanced, but definitely advanced enough for someone to get an understanding of what traffic signals are and how they operate in the field. I had a few more slides, but what you see is just one of those other slides. I encourage you to please Google FDOT or Florida DOT space connected vehicles in Google, and you'll find a DOT connected vehicles page where we are actually presenting all the 22 initiatives that we have at this stage. And 3 of those 22 initiatives relate to SPAT. We have completed the operationalization of signal phasing and timing project in the city of Tallahassee, here the headquarters of the state. Then we are almost done with deploying the Gainesville SPAT project. The second project, which is Gainesville, is a value addition component. It has a value addition component, which includes bicycle pedestrian safety, using vehicles as advanced detectors, and therefore traffic signals would be in a position to know well ahead of time how many vehicles are arriving at the intersection and so on and so forth. The third project, which is going to be in Pinellas County, we just completed the procurement, and we're going to begin the deployment anytime soon. So there's a lot of things that are going on right now. The reason I brought up this SPAT slide is because I want to emphasize that our connected vehicle program is actually coming directly out of the STAMP action plan and the TSMO program. So we're not trying to create anything new other than saying that leveraging the emerging technologies with connected automated vehicles is the best way to move that needle in terms of improving safety and mobility. So that's the ATSPM deployment. I could have had a better slide, I know. We do a lot of coordination with our district offices, and I think I will leave it at that for now. But Thank you so much for your time and attention. We really appreciate it. And before I close, I also want to thank several other colleagues who are on the line. We have Dr. Hardy and Dr. Priyanka Alluri from FIU. They help us significantly with our research efforts. Hazem is here from Orange County. He's one of our best partners in the state. I see John Hibbard, who's one of the national leaders in connected vehicles. Omar Maitna, District Traffic Ops Engineer in District 6. And Shayla Khalil Mardi with our TMC in District 4. So at least those are the names I could find on the list. And thank you all for being here. And we appreciate all you do. Denise, I turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Raj, thank you very much. Great. I know that Florida has a great stamp plan. I saw it about a year ago, and I'm glad that we're able to bring it to the group. Hopefully I will be able to get a link from you as well so that when we send out our information via email, we could provide a link for the members to be able to look at it in detail.
Absolutely, Denise. We'll do that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think with that being said, the questions, know that we will keep this line or this Adobe up for a little while longer after our webinar. If there are any questions that any of you were thinking about asking or want to ask, you can certainly type them into the chat box. We will then take them, compile them, and send them back out to the three speakers for response, and then we will include those in the final Q&A summary when it comes out along with the presentation. The Coalition has its own YouTube channel, so that's where you'll find the presentation, the audio. And then on our website, we will also provide the slides as well as the Q&A. So any other questions? I want to thank you, Emad and Soumya and Raj. Great presentations. And as I said, we started with the deeper dive and we moved up to a higher level, a little bit of a reverse. Yeah, please let us know if there's any. We welcome the feedback on what we can do more. If you want more of these, please let me know. I'm always open to these ideas. And does anybody have anything else to add? Anything, Raj, Emad? Soumya? Karen?
Denise? Oh,
yes.
Denise, is it okay if I just touch on one point? I know you asked me
Absolutely.
if you could cover this. I apologize that I did not send you the updated presentation, but you asked a very interesting question the other day, and let me try to
I did.
Repost that question. So this was about how Florida DOT responds from an arterial management standpoint regarding traffic signals and post-hurricane, I guess is the question. So.
Yeah.
The 6 different things I want to say, but I'll make it really quick. First and foremost, well before the storm, as soon as the, should I say, the governor's notification comes forward that we should be ready, we mobilized the State Emergency Operations Center, and from traffic operations, 5 of us are at the state EOC pretty much the entire duration before, during, and after the storm. So we pre-stage the uninterrupted power supply UPS units as much as we can, and we try to provide those UPSs to the local agencies, particularly to the traffic engineers, so that we can have the signals running post-storm. So making those UPSs available is one of the most important things we do. Immediately after the storm, we actually assess the damage. So we send our consultants, Florida DOT mobilizes its own troops, and a few teams are actually specifically assigned to evaluate the damage to the traffic signal equipment and whatnot, coordinate with the law enforcement to make sure the returning folks would be able to seamlessly drive through the intersections and get to where they want to get to. We also utilize our permanent traffic monitoring stations. We utilize the HERE data. We also, INRIX has been cordial to provide us access to their platform. I know that Shuman is on the line. Thanks, Rick. During the storm, even though we don't have a contract, they're kind enough to provide us the access to data. So we utilize RITIS, we utilize HERE data, with whom we have a contract. We utilize the RITIS database as well. Did I say RITIS earlier? I meant to say INRIX also. So we use all these data, and when a question came up from the governor's office in terms of how many people evacuated from the state of Florida, our own permanent traffic monitor stations became essential. So we do a lot of analytics in real time at the state EOC, trying to figure out what's happening. We post all this information onto Florida 511. We communicate this information with Waze. When we implement the emergency shoulder use on the freeways, we coordinate the activities between the freeways and arterials and keep the traffic signals running as smoothly as they possibly can. So data analysis is an important element. Coordinating with Waze and keeping them informed and requesting them to post specific messages is also what we do. So anyway, we do a whole bunch of things, and we do a whole lot of lessons learned as well. Just want to mention.
Thank you, Raj. I know we did talk about that yesterday, and I completely forgot. So thank you for bringing that up as well. It's important. I know signals when you have hurricanes, they don't play well together sometimes. So, alrighty. With that being said, then thank you, Raj. Thanks to everyone. And again, look for the email with the links to the slides, the audio, and to our